You're listening to Parasearch Radio, news, views and reviews from the world of the paranormal from across the UK and beyond. Find us on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web. Parasearch UK Radio. Parasearch Radio, broadcasting to the UK and beyond.
The views and opinions expressed by presenters and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Parasearch Radio or its affiliates and sponsors. Listener discretion is advised. You're listening to Kerry Greenaway and Mark Manley on the Dark Mirror Paranormal Show, only on Parasearch Radio.
Good evening and welcome to the Dark Mirror Paranormal Show. My name is Kerry Greenaway and I am back after my break away to bring these two gentlemen that have been running riot in the studio back to heel is all I can say. So, welcoming to the studio, Mr. Marcus Manius. Good evening, Marcus Manius.
Good evening, and how are you all probing? I mean, how are you?
Oh, you're such a good... And Carl Hutchinson.
Carl?
Mm-hmm.
He's eating.
Hello!
Hello. Sorry about that. I was otherwise alien. Yes. I was just taking a sip of drink.
Oh my lordy lord! Already it started. Anyway,
And I would personally like to say, welcome back, Carrie. And to be truthful honest, you don't need to take us in hand. You don't need to control us. We did a lovely job between myself and Mark the last couple of weeks. And I think we had some great shows.
Oh dear. If you did miss any of the shows where I wasn't on there with the guys, loose, free, then go check them out. Absolutely hysterical. That's all I can say. Absolutely brilliant. Did you miss me? Did you miss me?
Of course we missed you.
It was odd doing the show without you.
Yeah.
I'm not going to make any comments about Kerry taking me in hand, but it was very strange doing it without you because it's having that voice of reason. There's me and Carl going, oh yeah, aliens, blah, blah, aliens, and we're just waiting for Kerry to go, excuse me.
Let's bring it back on subject.
Oh dear. So we have been down, or you guys, and before I had my break, we're down the ufology rabbit hole, weren't we? And we're still down it because tonight what we're going to have a little discussion about is alien abduction. Now this seems to be this is actually quite a huge topic, isn't it, guys? And it's quite emotive, I feel, but I think this buys into a lot of people's personal fears in regards to this one. It's, someone coming along and you're totally out of your control. They come along, they take you, they do what they want to do, and then they pop you back and you've got no control over it. So I think psychologically this is based in a huge fear set. And it's quite a new phenomena, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it's only been sort of really... You look back at the records and yes, you see information that happens and reports of lights in the sky, etc., but it's only in recent times in modern history that this whole abduction thing has sort of been more prevalent. And we're not saying it's like the last couple of years. We're talking in modern times, the last 10, 15, 20 years. It's sort of been more prevalent on this whole abduction thing where people have reported being abducted. They have mind lapses where they don't know where they've been and all of a sudden they're back. And There's other scenarios of certain famous cases which we've discussed in the past. So yeah, it's not something which you look at and go, happening. It could have done, but I think the way the media is and the way social media is, the way everything else is, it's sort of become more to the front of people's minds, so to speak.
There's also the school of thought that the whole reason it's only sort of become predominant since about the 1950s, 60s is because back along, especially Victorian times, and that, if somebody turned around and say, I say, old chaps, this person looked at me with a big finger and went, E.T., ouch, and bent me over, did something unexplainable to my body, they would have been thrown in a mental institution.
Yes,
well,
completely.
There is that.
They would have been held to ridicule. Even when you had the what's her name, Betty Andreasson? Betty and her husband. Yeah, it was Betty Andreasson.
Betty and Barney Hill.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I'm looking at a different one. Betty Andreasson Abduction. Yeah, that was back in the 60s. But Barney Hill, I think, was just before that, wasn't it? It was 1965, I think. This one's 67. 61. See, I was close enough. I could have said 69, but I didn't. There was one that happened in 69.
I'm sure there was. I'm sure there was a
And
lot
I believe that's a very pleasurable experience for the both of them.
Anyway.
Well, that's a whole new show, which would be all about alien probing. Anyway,
Sorry.
Yes. No, I was going to say it only came into light in predominantly late 50s, early 60s, and that was when you had credible witnesses like the police, and you had this, and you had cameras for a start. Because back before that, you didn't realise it. You had weird shots of people chucking a frisbee in the air, getting their Kodak out, and going, "Look at that flying saucer." So it's taken a bit more seriously these days because there's a lot more proof. But there's also a train of thought that I'll go into in a bit.
Okay, well, I have to say, I think some of these abductions are very interesting because they don't actually remember the abduction. They remember being, in the circumstance of driving along a road or whatever the circumstance is, and then nothing. And then it's only when they are regressed or, hypnotised or something like that the actual abduction scenario seems to come out. We talked about that a few weeks ago with that guy, didn't we? The police officer.
Yep.
Whatever his name was, can't remember his name now. And even with Betty and Barney, it was only once they got psychiatric help that the abduction scenario actually came out. So it does
regressive hypnosis, didn't they?
Yeah, and so I think it leads a question then, is if it's coming out under regressive hypnosis, is it because we know the brain can create false memory.
Mm-hmm.
See, I'm with you with this. If it's a single case, like one person on their own, I can certainly see, the brain's making up for something that's traumatic that happened, and it's trying to gloss over that and give you a different picture. But when you've got two people together at the same time, and when they were both regressed, they were regressed separately away from each other, and both stories were exactly the same, that gives a little bit more credence for me. But when you're on your own, it could be a number of factors make people think that.
Yeah, I agree with what Mark just said. I think if you take these personal experiences on an individual level, yes, you can probably put quite a hefty belief behind it that it's personal experience and it's the mind that has done it and they're believing this. But when you have some of these cases that have happened where you've got multiple, even more than 2 or 3 people, these are people that have been abducted and they all then describe the same scenarios, that's when I think it becomes more interesting to look into and discuss more.
True,
Definitely.
Except you're taking out the whole business, I suppose, of looking at how the brain works and how various people look at how various psychologists and psychiatrists and scientists view the mind. They see the mind almost like a transmitter, right? So if you're in a scenario with somebody that's an unusual scenario and you've got this transmitter-receiver scenario going on, naturally, because of how our human bodies work and how our brains work, then it leads you to or make an assumption that possibly there's some form of mind interaction going on.
Is that what happened then? Did an alien come along and go, sorry, did an alien come along and just interact with your mind?
No, I'm actually taking out the whole alien factor. I'm saying that, okay, so you've had a weird traumatic experience on a road in regards to Betty and Barney, for example. Yeah, they've had, they're together, they're married, so they've got a very close relationship together. Yeah, you don't know what their cultural influences are in regards to what they've been watching and you know, their interests and stuff like that. And they have a traumatic experience, and then what happens is their memory, because they're so conjoined mentally, has created a similar scenario that under hypnotic regression comes out as the same scenario.
Yeah, which I agree with you, Kerry.
Oh, how I missed having devil's advocate.
Okay, when you look at those two, they both had the same experiences because they were on the same area, on the same road, etc., etc.
They watched the same things, they lived together. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So in regression, they possibly could have, their brain could have basically come up with this scenario to avoid them having any lasting damage, because that's what the brain does. I've had a car accident, and I don't remember the car accident because that's the brain protecting yourself for a traumatic moment.
I'll tell you what, I agree with that, because I mean, one I'm not going to go into it, but something happened to me when I was a kid that I completely forgot, didn't know anything about, and it was only the last couple of years something happened that made it come out, and it was a very traumatic thing, and I didn't know anything about it for nearly 40 years. So yeah, your brain can do things like that.
Exactly. So then you've got to consider they are they are a couple. They're watching the same films. They're probably talking about the same things in the newspaper. All that sort of thing. So maybe, just maybe, this is something. If we regressed Carl about that car accident, it could come out as something completely different to what it was.
To be truthfully honest, listening to the, I spoke quite a long time because it was quite a serious car accident, and we did close down a major thoroughfare into central London for a good 6 hours. And speaking to the paramedics that were on the scene, funny enough, because the job I was doing at the time was I was teaching people to play golf, and some of the people that I was teaching that morning were police officers, paramedics, who just happened to be on scene when the car accident arrived, the car accident happened. So some of the stuff that they told me after the fact that I was saying, because I was like transfixed. I told one of the paramedics, which says more about myself as a person mentally. We will probably understand this, but I'd worked a morning shift. I got in my car. I was going out for the evening into London. I was driving to my a friend's house in Surbiton, in London. I was at Kingston. I remember putting on this brand new suit that I literally bought a couple of days before, got into my car, left the car park, don't remember anything, woke up 3 days later in hospital. Don't have any recollection between leaving the car park to when I woke up. But the people that arrived at the car accident that actually happened, so one of the funniest things was that I was very, very lucid. I was telling them what had happened. I was telling them this, that, and the other. But one of the funniest things that they were telling me was that every so often when they said, "Oh, we're going to have to take your suit off," please don't cut my suit off. I was telling them, please don't cut my suit off. And I was asking, can I have a pint of Guinness? I don't drink Guinness.
See what I mean? But that is... Isn't that a strange thing then? That's strange, isn't it? You never don't like Guinness, and that's happening. So, also, I think the other thing to consider is they've been driving, looking at Betty and Barney in particular, they've been driving along a road for a long time and not come across anybody, right? So they've not got any, they're nothing to break up that drone.
A windy country road in New Hampshire. One thing I've got to say about the Hill case is after it all happened, and they eventually got down to Portsmouth, not Portsmouth here, but Portsmouth over there. Barney's shoes were scuffed, Betty's dress was ripped, and they both said that they felt dirty, and the watches had stopped, and there was 2 hours missing. So obviously, whatever happened in those 2 hours. But they've obviously been out the car because of all that stuff that happened. So something traumatic's gone on, but we just don't know what. But when you look at all the case history for that, and when you look at what the hypnotist said and everything, I do think something possibly that way happened. I'm not going to turn around and say, all the medication wore off. I do think something happened.
I'm not saying they didn't experience something strange.
Yeah.
What I'm suggesting is it wasn't necessarily alien. What I'm suggesting is that you've got to look at what was happening in their lives beforehand.
Yeah.
He worked night shift and then decided to take on this road trip. Yeah, she also had a very emotionally challenging job. So it was a well-deserved break they were going on. They were at night driving on a road, no other breaking up of, no other cars or, street lights or anything like that. You've got the constant drone of a regular speed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody that's driven at night or driven along hours.
Yeah, you blank out.
You get that whole mundane situation of the tyres on the road, which sort of can send you into that sort of non-focused state. And I've done it. I drive a lot in my life, and I've driven all hours under the sun. And I've been in situations which is bad. I don't remember getting back from a certain location.
Exactly.
Not saying I was abducted by aliens, but I just remember leaving and then getting home and then thinking, well, I don't actually remember much about the journey.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So look at it like that. Then maybe they see a strange light. They're in maybe, and I'm playing devil's advocate on this. So maybe that state they're in. Maybe it was just a car with different headlights or something that they saw. Mm-hmm. They've skidded to a halt, got out because their brain has sort of flipped, as it were. And like I say, the close relationship between the two of them shouldn't be discounted, or the cultural influences they were looking at beforehand. 1961, look at the films and stuff that were around there. Yeah, exactly. They were also a mixed race couple, so they were obviously under pressure in a different way as well. I think there are other... Yes, they were scuffed. Yes, they felt dirty. They could have got out the car. And there could be a logical explanation. Under hypnotic regression, their brain fills in the gaps of something that's actually naturally occurred.
The brain is an amazing instrument. It protects you in so many different ways, like it protected me. I don't remember anything about it. And I had to go to court about it because of the nature of the accident. And I had to basically stood up in court and say, I do not remember anything, because I do not remember anything. And to this day, I don't remember anything. So your brain protects you. So potentially with these two, something traumatic could have happened that the brain has then blocked out. Mm-hmm. And then during progression, the brain is then conjured up as visual pareidolia happens or whatever. Mm-hmm. Whatever you say, the brain is an amazing thing. It will look at things in different ways. So potentially these two could have had a traumatic moment, could have skidded, could have done whatever, not involving another car, or they could have seen strange lights, and then they came to a screeching halt or whatever. Could have been a low-flying plane or whatever. And their brains have then protected themselves. And then all of a sudden, when in progression, the brain is then played a story that would play out to protect the well-being of the people that were there. But with that in mind, would two different brains play the same story?
I've got another one for you as well.
That is where I say when you look at a psychologist's or a scientific way of looking at it, they do say in regards to consciousness, they see it as a transmitter. If you're transmitting, you can receive too. So because they're a couple, because they're obviously gone through as a couple, a mixed race couple, in the time they have, they're obviously very close. They've obviously got a very close bond. You have to sort of maybe consider the fact that it may be a shared memory or a shared hallucination or a shared vision.
Mm-hmm.
than it being an alien abduction. I'm just throwing out devil's advocate because we also have looked at, in quite some depth, another case, which was the Travis Walton case, Fire in the Sky show. We looked at that quite in depth.
The famous film, the famous thing, and I think Mark will talk a little bit about that, but he's also got another point to make.
Yeah, no, we'll get to him in a bit. It's just one. There was a case that happened in 1976, Allagash in America, in Maine. 4 people out camping, all friends, and then one of the nights they were camping, they saw a very bright light in the sky, but that was it. And on the 3rd night of the camping, they decided to try night fishing in a canoe, and they basically all went out in a canoe, night fishing, and they noticed a bright light again. And then they were in their early 20s, these guys, so that's the only thing that rings a bit of a few bells for me. One of the guys used his torch to flash an SOS pattern at the light, and then according to all of them, the light then expanded and enveloped all of them, and that's the last thing they remember. They woke up not in the canoe or anything, but back at the campsite, no recollection of what happened or how they got there with the light or anything, or how they got off the water. And the fire they'd stoked up before they left to go to fishing, intending, because they wanted it to still be burning when they got back, was completely burnt down to embers as well. And they just had no clue as to what was going on.
Now, one thing I will say with this, and again, I'm going to throw devil's advocate, scenario in here. Lights. Right? Now, okay, so we don't know what those lights are. We could put it down to a lot of different things. But in 2 cases we've looked at so far, we've got lights. Now, we know that lights, pulsating or throbbing lights...
throbbing.
Can affect the electrical impulses in the brain. We know this.
We know that because people that suffer from epilepsy, flashing lights can cause the brain to have synapses that can cause different...
Get it out, man. Spit it out.
Yeah. Sorry.
Exactly.
Also, early 70s, in their early 20s, I'm sorry, but there's a little bit of the hippie thing comes out with me as well, like LSD or anything like that.
Or even just having a drink. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even just having a drink. And also, we also know how the eye reacts in darkness.
Mm-hmm.
Now, even if you're in like a car, in regards to Betty and Barney, it's darkness around you. You're focused on the light in front of you with your headlights with the car. With these guys, they've been focusing on a fire, and then they're now, oh, hang on, let's switch our vision to the sea and do some night fishing. You know what I mean? You've got a lot of eye thing going on. A technical term there, everybody. You've got an eye thing. I'm not saying these people aren't experiencing something. I'm not giving an explanation in regards to what the lights could be. I don't know. Right?
Yeah, but you're posing a more forget the little green men whisking you up to a spaceship and doing all sorts of weird and wonderful things. You're looking at it from a point of view of it could have been you saw something. It could have been a plane that the lights were flashing and your brain reacted to it, and then you had a moment. And then afterwards, you came back lucent and you realised there's potentially a little bit of time that you don't remember because of what was going on.
But the thing is I can understand one, possibly 2 of them being photo sensitive, because a lot of people are, but all 4 of them. And the thing is when they were regressed, again, all separately, they all described exactly the same type of aliens and exactly the same scenario, but for each one individually, when they were being probed and examined and stuff, that little bit of the story was slightly different because they could all see the others sat down on like a weird metal bench, frozen, unable to help. And that's one of the things that does make me think, something's happened because of that.
We've just opened Pandora's box then, because
I never touched it.
You look at the basics behind it. They have a memory loss. They were driving. They saw weird lights in the sky, and then next thing there's time lapse, and they don't know what's gone on, and they're in a situation. There are cases which I find more interesting where these people have said they've been abducted and this, that, and the other, and the same sort of scenarios are driving, and they've got this memory loss. But then there's one key difference to it. They've then had things removed from their bodies, such as bits of metal from their neck, their ears, places that you shouldn't really have these sort of things, that have been tested that have produced reports that they're not from any known alloy metals currently available in the world. And that's when these cases start to get a little bit more, well, hang on, what's going on there?
I think
silence.
I think I'm trying to choose my words carefully. I think again, right, you know what I'm like? I like every single aspect of paranormal. My specialties is aliens and cryptozoology. But again, with abduction cases and sightings and this, that, and the other, I personally think it's the same as most paranormal activity and cases. 99.9% of everything you can eventually explain away, and there is a factual reason for it. But you get that 0.001% that there is no explanation, and something might genuinely have happened.
Yeah, exactly.
But I will still go back to, yes, I find that side of things very interesting too. There is a dentist guy, this is, my brain is just not with names tonight, I'm afraid, in America that's worked extensively with removal of these, he classes them as electrodes.
Implants.
Yeah, implants.
The implants. He sent them away for testing and stuff. And he's actually said that he's actually stopped using one lab that he used to send them to because they kept going missing.
Mm-hmm.
He was on a program called In Search of with Zachary Quinto.
That's it.
I know exactly who you're talking about, and that was a very interesting, because I watched all of those, and that was a very interesting episode, that one, because a lot of those probes, when they were taken apart and measured, one of them in particular, there was not the alloys, the minerals and stuff that were in it were of no known comparison on Earth.
Exactly, that's what I was mentioning a second ago.
And he's the only person that will actually go through removal procedures of this, in America anyway. I don't know, I didn't go further than that with this guy. But he does this for people, but he says what's actually very interesting about that is where these implants are actually placed within the body, because generally they're placed in places that are incredibly difficult for removal. He said, but they show no scar tissue in regards to having them been implanted, which where they are, you would, because they're like deep muscle, or they're in areas where there's a lot of bone and tendons. So if you had sort of like cut somebody open, put a probe in, sewn them back up, like we know in medical science that we use today.
I was going to say, that's our technology.
That's our technology that we know of at this point, is all I'm going to say on that one, because we can go into a whole government conspiracy about this one. But from what they use in hospitals...
Which we will do.
I'm sure we will. They are in places that would be it would create pre-scar tissue. So while he's trying to dig them out, there would be scar tissue.
Yeah, some of these implants have been put in like teeth, fatty tissues round the back of the ear, the base of the spine on the head. These are places which you would in modern technology you would be able to see scar tissue, see puncture marks, see this, that, and the other. And one of the cases which, funny enough, was similar, which was on the same night as that program we were talking about a moment ago. And this guy basically had something, and he had these experiences, and he basically said, "Oh, I'm going mental. I don't want to do it." And then all of a sudden, these flashbacks became more and more pronounced. So he then went to his doctor, and they were like worried because he was having these seizures. And then he had like all various different tests, and then they found this little metal thing at the base of his skull, which attaches to the neck, which they then pulled out, and it basically was when they tested it, was an alloy that wasn't from current research of any alloy in the world.
All I'm going to say is disclosed knowledge.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I will say. Is as we know, in regards to the military, there is a hell of a lot of technology and weaponry and, that has been developed that isn't in mainstream use.
Yep,
And
which is where I was saying when we said we will talk about government and stuff like this, because we discussed this on a few of the shows about UFOs. Is it craft that's happened in the past, such as the U-2 bomber, the stealth fighter, the stealth bomber,
the Nazi Bell?
Exactly. These flights have been happening a long time. They're witnessed. They're misidentified. They're suddenly UFOs. But at the end of the day, it's various different governments around the world testing experimental aircraft, etc., etc. So we discussed that in the past about UFOs. And is there cases where people have witnessed these crafts when they shouldn't have witnessed them, that have then basically been the government of then have an organisation which will then go out, a bit like the Men in Black of the Zappers.
Will Smith came down, he got his normalizer out, zapped everybody and said...
told them what they saw and this, that and the other. You've got a gap in your memory. Next thing, you've got an implant in your back of your head. And then through regression, you've just been up in a spacecraft with a egg whisk going up your backside.
Oh, can of beans and egg whisk, mate.
What you do in the privacy of your own home, mate, it's entirely up to you.
Hey,
talking of that, I have
don't knock it until you tried it.
I did once. I sat down far too quickly and we never saw it again.
But there are other cases, right, where people say they're abducted, generally when they're asleep at night and they're whisked off. And it's not a physical thing, actually. It's more of a spiritual thing. It's like their soul is taken up, not their physical body. And a lot of cases are coming out like this. But... sleep paralysis. And there is a proven psychological evolvement from the old hag syndrome through to alien abduction in these scenarios. But people are saying, this is becoming a thing. Now, having worked in a spiritual way quite extensively in my own right, when I've been... Oh, this is sounding batshit crazy now, isn't it?
Did you just swear?
Yeah. When I've worked spiritually, I have come across entities before now that look very similar to greys, but they're not alien. They're just higher or different dimensional ether on the ether beings. They're almost elemental type beings. Well, they are. That's what they are.
I've got a synopsis for you as well.
So it makes me wonder: are people having actual spiritual experiences with just a dimensional being that have always been here? Fairies, you think go to fairies? People used to say people got abducted by fairies. Is this just an extension of that? Except now, because of our modern media, cultural influences, it is now the alien. How about that one, guys?
I was about to say that, to be absolutely honest, if you get abducted by fairies, they're probably filming Priscilla, Queen of the Desert 2. What was I going to say? Yes, you've completely thrown me with that. What the heck was I going to say? Oh, yeah, sleep paralysis. I've had that once, and I can genuinely say, the thing was, I knew it was sleep paralysis, so when it happened, I knew what it was. But it is a very... I can see straight away why people would imagine things, and of course the old hag syndrome, and people thinking demons are sitting on their chests and this, that, and the other. It is a very, very strange thing, because I could open my eyes and I could move my eyes, but that was it. And it was like the bedroom was in sepia. It was, the old Wild West sepia pictures. Mm-hmm. Everything was like that, and it was eerily quiet. Nothing. There was no movement, nothing. And I will say, if I didn't know what it was, I could just well imagined things popping out and my brain going mad and this, that, and the other. Well, it's already mad anyway. I lost the plot years ago, but I get that. But before we do that, I've got to give you one case thing, and I want to know. In fact, anybody who's in the chat room as well, you can get stuck in on this one. I want to know what you think. I've got the A, B, or C for this. Whilst I've read it out, wishful thinking, drugs, or WTF, okay?
Oh my God, I dread to think what it's going to come out with, Carl.
Hey, this is new to me, and this is the whole thing about the Dark Mirror show. We like to throw curveballs.
You'll like this.
Okay, chat room, get ready.
Okay, have you ever heard of a gentleman in Brazil called Antonio Villaboas?
No.
Right, well, he was a Brazilian farmer who was working at night because it was basically too hot during the day. And then he saw a red star in the sky. And as the light got larger and closer towards him, he tried to drive away in his tractor. Yeah, you can just imagine that. That must have barely been rocking it down those fields. But the tractor died. It went, tell mama, and fell over. He then tried running away when he was accosted by 4 humanoid creatures that dragged him into the now landed craft. This is where it gets interesting. They stripped him, covered him with a weird gel, then they took blood samples. Then a female humanoid creature appeared, and they had sex.
I'm calling wishful thinking as well, Gemma.
Some hand motions followed, and ladies and gentlemen, you cannot see my hand motions on the camera.
I think we can all imagine the hand
All I
motion
can
that Mark
say,
is reacting at the moment.
Anybody listening, let's just say it was a Nescafe moment.
Some hand motions followed that Boas took to mean he had impregnated the creature and that she was going to leave, have the child, and raise it wherever she was from. And this is the brilliant bit right at the end. Then they gave him a tour of their spaceship before dropping him off.
Oh, well, at least they gave him a tour of the spaceship. I mean,
This guy,
it's like the cherry on the cake there, isn't it?
this guy went on to become a lawyer and have a family.
Thanks for...
Okay, sorry.
So
the thing in the chat room, so what do you want to say, people to say is...
What do they think?
Well, we've got all 3, actually. Ashley Nib is saying drugs for sure. But he actually said that before the story was read out.
Yeah, but Ashley knows what the Dark Mirror show is about.
Gemma just went, she's calling wishful thinking on that. I'm with her on that. And Richard has gone, I think he actually meant WTF. I think that's where he was going with that. And then Gemma's just said, did he get a cup of tea? Did he get a brew?
Well, they did.
Wow, that just conjures up all sorts of weird. How Gemma thinks that after an experience like that, she gets a cup of tea.
I'm sorry,
but this is after the.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
What the hell did they cover him in first? Was it pleasure gel? Secondly,
honey and oats.
Honey and oats. We know what you do with your muesli. No wonder that German Shepherd's always happy to see you.
So all I can say is Marrakesh, 1963. I wasn't even born then.
Did he get
wow.
I tell you what, if I'd been zapped up into a craft, they stripped me naked. First of all, they would have gone, what's going on here? Because of one hand and a metal leg, so I would be viewed as a god. Hopefully, they would have given me implants.
You haven't got a metal leg until today.
Honest to God,
I haven't taken delivery of that yet. I get that in a week on Monday. Then I'll have my heart and beat it.
So let's take the metal leg out of it, because that just is wrong, because you haven't got it yet.
No, don't take my leg out of it, because I'll fall over.
Got me all blushy, is all I can say. Right.
Gemma, hang on. No, we're talking about probing.
I know, I'm trying to get you off the probing.
I know what you're doing, and I'm not going to let you.
Oh.
But I'm sorry, but who in their right mind is going to go, yes, you see, they zapped me onto the aircraft. I'm speaking in the German accent.
Why are we German when this was Brazilian?
They went, he's a fine specimen of a man. We must have sex with you now. Let's cover him in this... What the hell? Covered him in this gel. And then leapt on him, and then like, I have baby now.
But I'm just a devil's advocate point of view. Maybe because there are different species and contact between these different species and a human, they need lubricant or some sort of like axle grease or
axle grease, WD-40.
Well, you don't know, something to keep
WD-40
the movement flowing. Maybe that could be that. It's nothing to do with it's weird little gel. It could be something that is.
It was love gel
because of the way the reproductions of the little people that are doing it. They need lubricant or weird stuff.
I think this is a hallucination born out of this particular man's loneliness and desperation to have a family.
I think I can explain this. Yeah, the WD-40 is for me and my metal leg there, Gemma. I won't go into it. Just our Tara. She's probably getting moist at the moment. Anyway, what I was trying to say...
I know. It's all gone to pot. Right, let's get this back onto topic, away from lube and
do you think
probing.
Because he's in Brazil... No. Do you think that because he was in Brazil, he'd had some peyote, he'd had some drugs, he was with his girlfriend, and what actually happened was he was trying to give her a massage, tripped, fell, the lid came off the massage oil, completely covered him, completely covered her, and then they thought, do you know what, let's not waste this opportunity. They had a little bit, but when she fell over as well and slipped, a bit of spaghetti went to her hair.
Oh my God, no, enough. Whatever. Enough.
Sorry. There's one thing that you just said.
Sometimes.
Where the hell is spaghetti coming from?
No, I have no idea. But anyway, bringing it back to serious topic, right? Oh, for God's sakes!
You stop.
A lot of people who have had this experience find it incredibly traumatic upon recall. So, is it coming across your darker side? You know, your shadow side, we call it ourselves. You know, your inner fears, your most inner fears. Is this where it comes from? You know, and the cultural influences. I'm trying to be bloody serious now, and I've got them both giggling their pants off in the background. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I can understand what you're trying to say. You're trying to bring it back to hallucinations and all this sort of stuff. But at the end of the day,
oil.
He mentions the Brazilian, which I find hilariously funny.
Well, look, I got the Brazilian.
All I can hear in my ear is Mark putting little things out, going, oil, Brazilians.
There's multiple reports over years of the same sort of things happening, where you get, all of a sudden, you're then laying there. I don't know about the gel and all this sort of stuff, but there is... moments where you are lucid and you look around yourself and you see metal, you see instruments, you see this, that and the other. Then there's a little bit of as your father going on with the alien race that happens, and this sort of stuff from various different places in the world, not just Brazil, not just America. This has also happened in the UK. There's cases in Wales.
Yes, but once it's out there...
That was an identified
once it's out there and it's in the media, everybody knows it, right? Everybody knows the basic basis for an alien abduction. Then you've got your own imagination playing in regarding your own fears and psychological things, which would then build on that fear. I just think... sometimes you have to see it for what it is, or we are actually being invaded by aliens and they keep taking people and doing blood tests and reproducing, and we are
submissive?
No, not submissive, subversively. That's the word I'm searching for.
Well, you're subversive
being
anyway.
Overtaken by... I'm not. By being taken over by these hybrid aliens. But... I don't know.
But there is another thing you've got to think about. Some of these cases have happened over multiple years in different continents at different times, going back the last 30 years. So some of these cases have happened where these people have actually stated this thing on record when social media or news feeds or things like that weren't so pronounced as they are now, but they have similarities on their experiences.
There's also
but if they're all coming from the same media, like if you go to the first one,
at the end of the day,
which is Betty and Barney.
I'm sat here in England back in the 1950s. I am not going to be hearing about some bloke in Brazil that got kidnapped and had sex with an alien, am I?
No,
yes, nowadays,
you would know.
You know
Sunday Sport wasn't out then.
At the end of the day, you know when the Pope farts on social media now. It's straight on your face.
But people were getting their reference points from the same point all over, which would be newspapers.
Yeah, but
Can you imagine Pathé News with that voice and the chicken at the beginning and everything? Can you imagine Pathé News?
Exactly.
Going
Welcome to Exilium Palace. This is the BBC.
In news today.
World news: a Brazilian had sex with an alien.
That was not a mainstream news article. I'm sorry, but Betty and Barney was. So that is out there. Not only that, but you've got to look at films and cultural influences that are surrounding that. You know, you've got to. I just don't see how you can't take that into account when looking at these
I'm not
kind of
saying
things.
that. You can't take that into account.
And it builds, doesn't it? It becomes a fear. It becomes an anxiety. So people who have multiple experiences then build that into something in their mind. And so every time they have some form of weird experience or bad dream or lucid dream, then it becomes the point of anxiety that comes up. I know what my biggest fears are, and they replay in my dreams time and time again. And that's what every single time, it will be the same triggers in those dreams that will set off my nighttime problems.
I've told you before that, you know, I'm with Lynn's and it'll never happen, so your bottom's safe. Anyway, what I was going to say is what is quite interesting about that Brazilian guy, and also about there's another couple who claim to have been abducted multiple times, and she said she had a fetus taken from her and everything, and that was Clayton and Donna Lee, abducted loads, but they all described the Nordic type of alien. And remember when we was talking about all the different types and that, we've talked about the Nordic ones, and I just thought that was really interesting, because at the time that South American Brazilian guy was going, I did all that with the alien, you know, was that
but
the time
maybe just Mark, just quickly, obviously we discussed this earlier, the different types of alien, and there's a particular type of alien which is more profound in these sort of cases. If we spin that out on a little bit, when you look at, say, Star Trek with the different colours of uniforms, maybe the Nordics are the ones in the red, which are the ones at the cattle fodder that go out there. All this sort of stuff, and not when you're wearing a red uniform and you're going on a landing party, you know you're not going to come back.
Maybe these
Nordics, whatever you want to call them, are the ones that are like the science officers that do all this sort of stuff. Then you've got the old Kirk or the Picard controlling masters, captains that sit in their armchairs going, oh, off they go. They're going to go and probe a couple of humans. They're going to go bang a few, and then we're going to have some fun and games about it. Maybe that's it. Maybe there's a different structure between these aliens, the different types, and there's a hierarchy. So the ones that do all the abducting, the weirdos that go out and capture cows that we discussed last week.
The weirdos.
Maybe they're the weirdos, and they're the ones.
You guys came to the conclusion that you think that's some form of is it called a red flag?
Yeah.
Like a smoke and mirrors scenario.
Yeah.
Now,
and I personally about this whole subject, we're nearly up to an hour, but I will say this: I think most of it is smoke and mirrors. Again, this subject, and I believe personally that it is potentially some sort of conspiracy, some sort of government, various different agencies around the world with the same gender, that they will basically put out these people and put out these amazing weird stories. Yes, I had sex with an alien. We did it 4 times a night and all this sort of stuff, just to make you sound like a complete and utter nut job, when in fact you witnessed something, you had an experience, you saw something, they did something.
And I'm going to throw this into the mix, right? Whenever you have any form of strange experience and you're telling somebody who's never experienced anything like that, you're always looked at like you're a bit weird, right? You know, I know from personal experience, when I've tried to explain some of the spiritual experiences and things that I've gone through from a spiritual perspective, this has got nothing to do with aliens, but it's also a little bit, you know, when we talk about a spiritual experience, 99.9% of that is coming, you're directing that, your belief system is driving that, and you're the one who's creating that. And, you know, if you've been... anyway, it doesn't matter. But
I know what you're saying.
I know exactly what you're saying.
Even when you do ritual work or occult work, you're the one that's manifesting that. You're putting that out there. So when you look at all different kinds of ways of looking at things, you've got to consider that this is maybe something coming from within that's being put out there, particularly with personal experiences in regards to alien abduction and stuff like that. It's just manifesting in a different way because of their belief systems and their cultural influences.
I also think a lot of it is knowledge as well, because like I said with myself when I had the sleep paralysis thing, because I knew all about that because of all the stuff that we do, I knew what it was straight away, so I didn't get scared. And I know myself that when I'm rational with a lot of things. Well, aliens. Anyway, I don't look at everything and go, oh my God, that's a ghost, or oh my God, that's an alien, or oh my God, it's a chupacabra. No, it's just a goat with bad teeth. I'll always look at some at first, and then I'll try and find out what it is before I'll go, it's this. But back in the day, you didn't have that knowledge. They didn't have the knowledge.
That's exactly what I was saying. If you look at things now for the reports that happened, say, 10, 15, 20 years or 30 years ago, and you look at them now, you can put that logic to it, that from nowadays knowledge, you can then sort of put 2 and 2 together and make him 4.
I want a selfie.
Back 10, 15, 20 years ago, you're going 2 and 2 make 7 because these things you're not aware of.
Exactly.
I mean,
but there is, and we have said there is, and it's been a proven psychological evolution between the old hag syndrome, and then it kind of went through a phase where it was like a man, like a shadow man, and then it went into alien abduction. So we've seen an evolution in regards to that naturally occurring through case studies regarding sleep paralysis. So this is what lends me to, and I'm bearing in mind, I've spoken to quite a few people on the recently regarding their experiences. What does strike me as interesting is there always seems to be 4 types. I mean, I know when we did the show on types of aliens, there was like hundreds, but it kind of distilled down to 4 types.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
4 types of alien that seem to be prevalent in regard to these experiences. You seem to get the same ones time and time again. And
that's
the same
what I was
things.
saying about hierarchy.
Exactly. And the same kind of things, like that he was shown in the spaceship afterwards. They seem to be, the people who experience this many times were saying they showed me their propulsion system. They showed me their, the engine. They did what they did, and they showed me like the ship afterwards. And you're like,
well, maybe it's
bizarre.
a bit like a bit like having sex and then you hug afterwards.
Well, yeah, have sex and then get shown your shit.
They're getting the goodies. They're doing the goodies, and then they go, there. Here, have a look at our propulsion system.
Right. So now, hang on. Just with what
That's
Carl
going to
said.
set him off on a right tangent. I can see where you're going with that.
No, right. Things Yoda would say in bed. Okay. Sleep on the wet, damp spot. I will not. Yeah. Bring me a towel. But according to Carl, you have got aliens up there going, right, you are going to do this, you are going to do that, and then you've got a bunch of like Nordic-looking hurdy aliens in red tops, and they're all sitting there playing rock, paper, scissors, going, oh God, have I got to really probe him? No, I did that last week. You could probe him. You know him, and I will cover him in the weird gravy.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. Maybe it's just like a hazing ceremony. Maybe they are given challenges like, I'll tell you what, let's go. We're going to kidnap a cow.
They have a certain quota.
We're going to go and kidnap a cow.
Oh my God.
We're going to lay it out, and then all of a sudden, I'll tell you what, just to get yourself an extra couple of points to get out the red one, to go into the orange one or the yellow one, you're going to have to give a little bit of a dinky with a U.
Anyway.
I've just got one thing to say, and this is serious. I do think, like when we spoke about it last week, I think this stuff, 99% of it, or even 99.9% of it, I think is it could be lucid dreaming, it could be sleep paralysis, it could also be false flags, and it could also be stuff. Some of it stuff that the government's up to, and they don't want people to find out, so they're giving false memories, because experimenting for some reason. But I do think there's, like I said with everything else, there's that 0.01 that may have a grain of truth in it.
But, as I say, this is the Dark Mirror Show. We will look at all aspects. At the end of the day, we probably come to the same conclusion that we always come to.
Alien Amsterdam's shop, yeah.
Aliens, and on the other hand, it could be other things. But we like to cover all bases. From the weird, the wacky, the crazy, the sex-deprived aliens to the more logical way of looking at it. But it wouldn't be this show without us covering and making light of it. We're not taking the mickey out of anything. We're not doing anything like that. We're just having a bit of a look at the various different aspects of the particular subject.
Okay.
Well, so next time you see...
I'm going to throw this last piece out here. Do you not think that with all the abductions and scenarios where they've harvested, as very politely put, Mr. Nick, harvesting, that they haven't collected enough? I mean, Jesus, come on.
No, I don't think they have.
They've got a few more ounces of baby gravy to get yet.
I think if you think these little people up there that think we've got to harvest all the... Because humans are a very unique species. There's each one of them, it's a bit like a snowflake. Every single human is different.
I am.
Until you've harvested, drained, teat, or milked every single human. I don't think you could just make it like a common thing. I don't think it's like a...
That's it. Show's gone. Kerry's off of one. That is my mission in life. Kerry's lost it. There you go. Baduns.
Yes! Welcome back to the Dark Mirror Show, Kerry. This is what you've been missing. No, what I'm saying is, potentially, they haven't catalogued every single possible human.
So you're telling me they're going through the human species, the billions of people.
Exactly, I do.
We've all got a chance at being abducted at some point, guys. So get your honey and your oats ready because they are coming to do your probing.
And aliens are coming. Oh God, get the umbrella.
Hang on, and if you do, remember one thing: that knock at the door could be the Men in Black.
Well, Carrie's already worried about that as it is.
Mate, they're in my garden. I told you, I've got a camp going with Men in Black in the garden. They're well set out there. I'll give them tea and coffee.
They could be doing all these weird things, trying to categorize every possible different human emotion type of person, because everybody's different. Everybody has different quirks. Everybody likes potentially in their butt, whatever. So everybody's like aliens. Everybody's different. Everybody's different.
No, I don't disagree.
They've just got to go through and catalogue everybody.
So wait your turn, guys. If you haven't been abducted yet, then going on Carl's theory, you're on a list. They're going to get to you.
It's like collecting butterflies.
Collecting butterflies, everybody. Alien
so many different types of butterfly. There's so many different types of human.
I've got to ask one thing.
So until you're pinned against that alien...
here we go. Pinned against the cupboard, yeah.
Pinned against that alien pinboard when you're on somebody's wall, a bit like a head and where you've been shot.
Oh, and a little head
human
as well,
beings we've got Stan from Cleethorpes. He had a package of this, and he had this going on. Then above him, you've got Derek or whatever, Sylvia, all these different types of emotions. This is what the aliens are doing.
Do you think, on a serious note, on a deadly serious note, this stuff that they use, this gel, whatever, and that they covered this gentleman in, and the gel that apparently they use when they do probing and things, do you reckon it's flavoured?
Oh, on that note, we have come to the end of the Dark Mirror show for tonight. That is the Dark Mirror's take on Alien Abduction. Next week, guys, we are talking... Oh God, what are we doing next week? Planet anomalies. Planet anomalies.
Planet anomalies. What do you mean by
anomalies? Well,
big piles.
All sorts.
Piles, different nuggets.
Well, we're not just looking outwards on this one. We're also looking inwards on this one. We have got a bloody show and a half lined up for you next week. Why do I do this to myself every week? I ask myself. Anyway, next week we are looking at Planet Anomalies on Parasearch Radio. Don't forget, we have shows going out every night of the week, and hopefully, if everything works right, we are launching something brand spanking new for you guys on Monday, but you'll have to tune in to the Parasearch Radio Live, which gives you the weekly roundup of shows on the Parasearch Radio Facebook group page. And, actually it's not. It's now on the like page because we've changed. So, if you miss any of our shows, you need to go to YouTube. When you go over to YouTube, click like, share and subscribe. And on that note, my beautiful men, say goodnight.
Well, I'll let Carl go first and say goodnight in his own inimitable fashion.
I would like to thank everybody, and if there's any aliens out there, please hug me tightly afterwards.
But make sure... For God's sake. Make sure you use flavoured lube, all right. But if they're listening to us up there, which I'm guaranteed they are, and
we'll be the last. We will be the last ones because they think we're gonna turn up and they're gonna knock on our door and we're gonna go, yeah, right.
They're just gonna go, oh shit.
Woohoo! It's our turn.
It's those two.
And on that note, just putting it out there, I'm allergic to strawberries, so please don't use strawberry lube. Good night, guys.
See you later.
Mark has to say goodbye. Yes. Mark has to say goodbye.
Okay. Hello, good evening, and aliens!
Good night, everybody.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to join us for more shows throughout the week. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and the World Wide Web to keep up to date with all the shows right here on Parasearch Radio.